What we're going to see here in this selection of the board is Randy Stedman making the case to raise non-union employees' paychecks. It's just amazing to me how unattached the Trimets executives are to the real world. You know, they preach that they don't have any money for the 3-hour transfer. They can't do the 3-hour transfer and bring back some of the frequent service lines, but at the same breath, they want more money for their non-union employees because they think they're going to leave and get better jobs in the private sector or whatever. And really, it's incredible watching this. It's just incredible because what I see as an observer is a completely unaccountable management that's just run rogue with this board of directors that just allows McFarland to do the most outrageous things in the public's face, unapologetic. Here he is at the same time that he's worried about his non-union employees. He's publicly trying to destroy his union employees by saying the union employees have the richest the richest health care. Of course, those employees are getting stabbed and attacked and spit on, but they have the richest health benefits. And he's worried about his non-union employees staying at the job. It's utterly incredible how this man thinks and how audacious he is in what he does. And it's equally incredible to watch him get away with all of this. Nobody can stop him. Nobody wants to stop him. Kitzhaber supports him, obviously. The puppets support him. It's an outrage. It's an outrage, people of Portland. I can't believe you have to put up with this kind of crap.
As we're talking about non-union compensation, we're reviewing the entire program, and we started that program actually several months ago in repricing the job. So every job that a person is in has a salary range associated with it, with a midpoint, minimum, and maximum. That process of making sure that the job range midpoints are where they're supposed to be, in other words, priced to the market average, hasn't been done in several years, hasn't been done since 2008. So we're about halfway, or a little more than half.
You know, I object to it immediately. The market average, the market. There is no market outside of transit for transit planners and all of the associated people. There's no market. TriMet is not a market organization in that it would never exist without full government subsidies. So when he talked about market, it's a flawed analysis right there, because there is no market for any of this. This is self-created market. You cannot talk about market when the market is created by yourself. So this is flawed right from the beginning.
Way through that process, and that doesn't have any, with some rare exceptions, doesn't have any impact upon individual salaries. It's just making sure that the salary ranges are appropriate to the market. What we found through that process is that about 60% of the jobs were priced appropriately to the market. And when I say the market, that means looking at where we recruit from and lose people to. For recruiting purposes, that sort of defines our hiring market.
Recruit people from and lose people to. That's his market. I don't know. I'm having a problem with this right from the very start.
About 20% of the job ranges were too low and about 20% were too high. So we have, where the ranges were too high, we lowered them. Where they were too low, we raised them. And again, about 60% there was no change. And unless somebody fell below the minimum of that range, there was no change to incumbent salaries. So again, we're about halfway through that process. We have we have legal, operations, and capital projects to go. But as we started that process, we identified some other issues that were obstacles, or are obstacles to our goal, which is to hire total compensation, to make sure that we have total compensation that's sufficient to attract and retain a high-performing workforce. And so we're beginning and a good bit through the process of addressing those issues. But let me just step back a moment and describe the situation, the context that we're looking at. Yes.
Mr. Chair. Yes, please. Randy, I didn't get a chance to review this document. I'm sorry, If you could switch the term non-union to non-represented, that would warm the cockles of my heart.
Okay. I'll try to do that, or just refer to them as
Because
administrative.
that term could be perceived as antagonistic.
Okay.
How's that?
Or
Well, Esmond just nailed it there. I mean, it's obviously intentional. This is intentional by these people. They know what they're doing. They're on the attack against the union employees. And yet people are showing up for work and doing fills and doing their day. You know, these operators are just oblivious to what's really going on.
administrative employees. Would that work as well?
Non-represented? Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yes, that'd be great.
So Trimet has a total workforce about 2,500 employees, and of that, there are about 430 administrative employees, and the average salary for that group is $76,482.
The average salary is $76,400 and some odd dollars. That's the average. You know, a bus driver 40 hours a week makes $53,000. This is the cold hard facts. Is that these people are making fortunes over a year.
A large number of those administrative jobs are non-management jobs. In other words, they're non-exempt jobs and receive overtime. And I think that's important to remember. About 20% are non-exempt hourly paid employees, and they have an annual base wage of about $43,000. And about 106 of those non-represented employees or administrative employees make less than the average or the typical 15-year bus operator. I just want to...
This is really despicable the way that he frames this conversation. They'll be making less than a 15-year bus. That's 15 years, okay? It's 15 years of your life to get up to the wage of one guy sitting behind a desk, 9 to 5 every day, air-conditioned environment, no threats from the public, weekends off, Christmas off, New Year's off, which operators don't get for 10 years. So for him to equate this to a 15-year bus driver is really sinful. Once again, all it does is show you the complete lack of respect that McFarland and his crew has for bus operators. That's all. It shows that very clearly.
Put that in context, because it's important to note that a large number of our administrative employees are non-exempt family wage level jobs. These non-union or administrative employees are broken down into 3 different total compensation tiers. And when we talk about total compensation, we're talking about both salary, benefits as an active employee, benefits eligibility as a retired employee, leaves, and other forms of indirect compensation. And as we have been looking at this administrative group, we have found that they vary substantially based on date of hire and in 2 primary ways: the retiree health benefits for which they're eligible and the pension benefits for which they're eligible. And again, that eligibility is based on date of hire. So we've already recognized in our HR policies that there are 3 tiers. Tier 1 is a group that was hired before April 27th, 2003, and the characteristics of that group, 47% of them, or 203, are there's 203 out of the total that are in that group. Their compa ratio, and when I refer to compa ratio, that's simply the incumbent salary divided by the salary range midpoint. So in the aggregate, that group is pretty much at the market average, again assuming that the salary ranges are correct, and we're in that process, as I mentioned, of going through and verifying that. But their compa ratio is pretty close to 100%, meaning at the salary range midpoint. They qualify for retiree health care and an actuarial reduced defined benefit pension at age 55 with 5 years of service and then a full...
Did you catch that? The administrative employees used to be vested after 5 years. They could leave after 5 years, at age 55 with full medical. Okay, they don't have it anymore, granted, but this is what they had. It took union employees 10 years to get that, but the administrative employees had it in 5 years. How about that so 5 years at TriMet and you get a pension for life with full medical.
Benefit at age 62. We've calculated that beginning with implemented changes for January 2014, that the present value of that retiree health is about $130,000 for a single employee and about $260,000 for a retiree and spouse, who have retiree benefits equal to the active employees through their retirement life. And the value of that Tier 1 defined benefit plan is equal to about 6% or more of current year salary per year than what I'll describe as the Tier 2 and Tier 3. So those retirement health benefits and pension benefits have significant value. Then there's the second tier, a group hired from April 27th through April 27th, 2003 to April 30th, 2009. That comprises about 25% of the administrative workforce. Their compa ratio, or salary divided by midpoint, is 95%, with an average salary of $74,249. This group has to be 55 and have 10 instead of 5 years of service for the retiree health care benefit. And there's no eligibility for the pension plan. They are eligible for the 401A 457 plan, which is a 401k type plan, into which TriMet contributes 8% of compensation, and there's no employee match for that contribution, and that has 36-month cliff vesting of credited service. So that's Tier 2. And then finally, the Tier 3 employees were hired after May 1st, 2009. That's about 28% of the current workforce. That is the group that is growing. So as the Tier 1 and Tier 2 our employees are beginning to retire, that 28% or 120.
Now, I want you to look closely at that, because that's what they want for us. Did you see what he just said? The people that were hired after 2009 get no retirement medical whatsoever. Zero retirement medical. That is what he wants for you. Okay? You're going to let McFarland take away your medical coverage that this union worked so hard for?
20 employees. That's the group that's beginning to grow. Their compa ratio is 92% with an average salary of $64,629. They have participated in the 401A plan, but they are not eligible for retiree health that is subsidized by TriMet. They can have it, but they would pay 100% of the premiums, and those premiums are so expensive that essentially nobody would take that. So those are the three groups. And what we've identified associated with those three groups is that the Tier 1 and Tier 2 have a total compensation package because of the retiree health care benefits and or the pension. And that has kept turnover historically low at TriMet for the administrative group. And when I say low, including retirements, that historically has been in the 5 to 6% range. That's a little higher than the represented group, who has turnover, including retirements, historically of the 2 to 4% range, but still pretty low. And that compares to state and local government, historically 9.5 to 10%, and the state of Oregon employees of 7.3% in the year 2010. That non-union group has had a 3.5-year merit freeze until July 2012, when there was a 3% compensation adjustment on average, varied by individual, and there aren't any fiscal 2014 merit increases planned. So since 2006, the average annual increase for non-union non-represented employees has been about 1.7% compared to the represented employees of about 2.6%. What we've also begin to see is that as we have had an improved economy, both public and private sector employees are resuming their normal merit and merit programs.
I wonder where he gets the information that all the companies around the world and governments are resuming their normal raise structure. I wonder where that comes from. That's a highly suspicious comment he's making, because all I hear is them still cutting and cutting back cutting back everything really. There's no expansion going on. I'm not sure where they're getting this information.
Well, we have continued to have constrained increases due to budget problems. The problem that all of this contextual information represents is that, as I said, Tier 1 and 2 employees are beginning to retire through the two pivots that I mentioned at two different points of time: removal of eligibility for retiree benefits and removal of eligibility for the pension plan. The benefits of the Tier 3 employees are resembling what the market is. And as I mentioned, their direct compensation, their compa ratio is less than the market. And although they are less tenured with Trimet, their being less tenured with Trimet does not mean that they are necessarily less experienced than the current employees. They could have been doing their job at some other organization for 20 years and come to Trimets more recently and still be in that Tier 3, and that compa ratio is still noticeably below the market average. And as those Tier 3 employees begin to replace retiring Tier 1 and 2, we become exposed to the market for competition for talent that is.
This argument we hear from every bureaucrat, every administrator, every academic, every person who's making who's on a tax-funded job. This is a boilerplate form letter argument. Talent, but well, if we don't keep them paid nicely, they'll get up and leave, and the talent will leave. And I have a lot of objection to that. I mean, I'm not sure what talent they're referring to. Whatever happened to the notion of public service. I find that boilerplate, the talent will leave if we don't appeal to their greed, completely failed. If it wasn't always the excuse for trying to find raises, it's always the same excuse for all of these people trying to get raises for themselves. It's always the excuse they use. People will leave. Well, let them leave. You can do better, go do better. This is what Trimet pays. I think it was brought up that there's this huge population of motivated, intelligent college graduates that are just waiting for a chance to get going in the labor market. Let's look at them. Okay, let's stop trying to appease the greedy people. Let's look at the people trying to get into the labor market here. Let's stop with this nonsense. If we don't pay them, they'll leave. Let them leave. Who the fuck cares?
Largely based on direct salary, and yet we have constrained merit increases, and they're already below market, and so we are perceiving a flight risk, and that flight risk is already manifesting itself in the numbers. I mentioned our turnover has been historically low, but it jumped from 6-something% to over 11% in the current year for that non-represented group, and that's a 77% increase, and 63% or so increase for voluntary separations, in other words, resignations. So the numbers are beginning to reflect that flight risk. So again, just looking at that Tier 3 group, whose benefits are at the market and whose compensation is not at the market average, what they're seeing in terms of annual progression, and in their salaries, and they're very sensitive to that, again, because their benefits don't have the stickiness to Trimet that it used to have. They have seen a market in 2009 where the market moved at 1.78%. Those that were on board had a 3.8%.
This guy keeps talking about market. There's this huge body of unemployed people in the United States right now. Most of them are not counted in the unemployment figures. There's a huge amount of people. And he keeps talking about market. The market is an employer's market, not an employee's market. Okay, wake up, Trimets. I know you live in a parallel universe. Since your money just comes from Uncle Sam, you never have to do anything for it. You know, it's free money to you, and you don't have to provide anything for it. All you guys do is sit around and make these grandiose plans. But this is a fraud, okay? This whole presentation of his is a fraud. He's trying to put forth the argument that there's millions of jobs out there that all these Trimets people are going to split, okay? The only reason they have no health insurance is because that's what he wants their union employees. But he doesn't want. You can see what McFarland's doing here. He's pitting the union against the non-union. Okay, this is what this is all about. The other interesting thing is how he values his non-union people and doesn't have any value to his union people. Very clear.
But 2010, 11 were 0% at TriMet, where the market was still moving at 2% to 2.3%. 2012, the market moved at 2.25%. We did have that 3% adjustment. 2013, the market again resuming its normal levels or near normal levels, 2.53%. TriMet is at 0%. And we're expecting, based on the large compensation house projections, that the market merit increases will be at 2.8 to 3.0%, and we're at 0%. So our challenge in this environment is to look at that non-represented compensation program and build a sustainable market-based total comp program that addresses that asymmetrical difference in total compensation between the Tier 1 and 2 and on one hand and the Tier 3 on the other, and continues to ensure that we can attract and retain a high caliber workforce. So that's the challenge that we're working on now, and describes the work that we've done to make sure that the ranges are at the market.
I can only comment that it's pretty shocking to watch this, how concerned he is for the non-union employees that they're going to leave. It's shocking in the fact that they don't have any such sympathy for the union employees. As a matter of fact, they wanted the union employees to leave. And that dichotomy in how they view one set of their staff versus the others, it's shocking. It's shocking to actually hear them say it. Okay, it's shocking. I mean, I knew as a 15-year employee there that I was not valued. And, you know, eventually led to my departure. They don't need somebody like me around, obviously, riling up the troops. They don't need that. And I didn't want to be there anymore anyway. But the striking thing about this is how they're trying to undo. See, McFarland is trying to undo the changes he made to the non-union employees. He already made them go down so he could hold that up against the union. But now he's trying to undo that. He's trying to undo what he's done by saying, oh, look, we cut away their retirees, so we need to raise their pay. Well, you know, I find the whole McFarland administration insulting, and it's appalling, really. I mean, I was not a fan of Fred's, but compared to Fred, McFarland is really a dog, a slug. The man is really incredibly horrible, and I can't believe he's still there after all the stuff he's done. He's still there. And there were rumors about him. No, Bob Nelson's here to take over. I knew that was all garbage, man. No. McFarland clears all this stuff with people before. He's not him. Once again, you have a figurehead. He's the figurehead that's implementing the policies. TriMet is about money and capital projects. It's not about transit. You have to understand that. You got to get that through your head. Transit's there. They pretend they're a nice transit district. Yeah, it's okay for me. I live in Northwest Portland. I can grab a 15 bus. I can grab the streetcar, the MAX. But in Portland, you got a decent transit district. Anywhere out of Portland, it's not so great. But the main business of TriMet is capital project. Millions upon millions, billions of dollars go through there. And that's where the money is. Where the money is where the power is and where the influence is. TriMet is a capital projects agency. One other thing I want to say, I want to compliment Joe Rose for writing about this. I didn't think the mainstream was going to cover this at all. I mean, I was already looked at it and I went, holy shit, am I going to be the only person that covers this story? But he beat me to it, and he actually covered the story, and he actually said the truth. I mean, I got to hand it to Joe. His work the last year has just been phenomenal. you can't please all of us all the time, but I mean, and generally speaking, Joe Rose's work on transit has been phenomenal this last year, and he said what has to be said. They're setting this whole thing up so they can legitimize raises to themselves again, because they hid those raises. They operated in an unethical, immoral fashion previously. They're trying to set a stage here to make themselves even richer than they already are.